Hi students, next topic is open source development. What is mean by open source development? Open source development is an approach to software development in which the source code of the software system is published. Means we are going to publish the source code of the software system. Okay, and volunteers are invited to practice in the development process. Means we are going to publish the source code of the software system, and who are willing to practice, they can practice in the development process. Its roots are in the free software foundation. Means in this link you are going to get the source code. It advocates that source code should not be proprietary but rather should always be available for user to examine and modify as they wish. Means it should not be under any ownership. Okay, it should be always available for user to examine and modify as they wish. Means for the practice purpose, for the development process, anybody can use the free code available at any time. Okay, means the source code should not be under any ownership. That is only they are telling here. Okay, there was an assumption that the code would be controlled and developed by a small core group rather than users of the code. Okay, next, open source software extended this idea by using the internet to recruit a much longer population of volunteers developers. Many of them are also users of the code. In principle, at least any contributor to an open source project many report and fix bugs and purposes propose new features and functionality. However, in practice, successful open source systems still rely on a core group of developers who control change to the software. Means we are going to get the and Linux, Java, the Apache Web Server, MySQL, DBMS, okay, IBM and SAN. It is usually fairly cheap for free to acquire open source software because it is very cheap. Okay, you can normally download source open source software without any charge. However, if you are want documentation and support, then you have to pay for it. Otherwise, you don't need to pay it. Okay, but costs are usually fairly low. Okay, if you want to document and support, then you have to pay for it. Otherwise, you don't need to pay for it. If you are paying also, it is fairly low. The other key benefits of using open source product is that mature open source systems are usually very reliable. Okay, the reason for this is that they have a large population of users who are willing to fix problem themselves rather than report this problem to developer or and wait for a new release of the system, because there are huge number of users of the source code. If there is any bugs also, the users themselves only they were going to fix the bug. They will not going to report this problem to any developer or wait for a new release of the system. That is the use of open source development. Okay, bugs are discovered and repaired more quickly than it's usually possible with priority software. Okay, for any company involved in software development, there are two open source issues that have to be considered. Means they are telling for any company involved in software development, there are two open source issues. These are two open source issues. Should not, should the product that is begin developed make use of open source component? Should an open source approach be used for the software development? These are the two issues for the open source. Okay, the answer for these two is, the answer for these questions depends on the type of software that is being developed and the background and experience of the development team. Okay, for answer for these two questions is that the answer to this question depends on the type of software that is being developed and the background and experience of the development team. Okay, if you are developing a software product for sale, then time to market, okay, and reduce cost are critical. Okay, these are two critical if you are selling the product. Which are the two critical problems here? One is time to market and reduce the cost are two critical problems if you are selling the product. Means, okay, if you are developing in a domain which is there are high quality open source system available, you can save time, money by using the system. Okay, however, if you are developing a software to a specific set of organizational requirement, then using open source component may not be an option. Means you are developing a software to a specific set of organization requirement, means then using open source component may not be an option. Okay, companies believe that involving the open source community will allow software to be developed more cheaply, more quickly, and will create a community of users for the software. Okay, many companies believe that adopting an open source approach will relieve confidential business knowledge to their competitors, and so are excellent to adopt this development model. Okay, then open source license. Although a fundamental principle of open source development is that source code should be freely available, this does not mean that anyone can do as they wish with that code. Okay, this does not mean that anyone can do as this wish with that code. Okay, means they are telling that although fundamental principle of open source development is source code should be freely available, but meaning of this uh, source code should be freely available means does not mean that anyone can do as they wish with that component, that code. Means legally the developer of the code, either a company or an individual, still own the code. Okay, they can place restriction on how it is used by including legally binding condition in the open source software license. Means they are telling that if they if though the source code is freely available but it is owned by someone else, okay, you can do some restriction for their source code. Okay, means we are going to fix some license version. Okay, and the most open source license are del- derived from one of the general model. Means they are telling that most open source license are derived from one of three general model. There are three general license model. One is GNU General Public License, GPL. One is GNU Lesser General Public License, second one. And Berkeley Standard Distribution License is third module under the license. Okay, what is meant by GNU General Public License? This is a so-called reciprocal license that simplistically mean that if you use open source software that is licensed under GPL license, that you must make that software open source. That is one model of general public license. Okay, next one is GNU Lesser General Public License. This is a variant of the GPL license where you can write components that link to open source code without having to publish the source of this component. Okay, however, if you change the licensed component, then you must publish this on open source. Means they are telling if you change the license component, then you must publish this on open source, otherwise no need of it. Okay, this is GNU Lesser General Public License. Last one is Berkeley Standard Distribution License. This is a non-reciprocal license. Okay, first one is reciprocal license. Okay, this Berkeley Standard Distribution License is non-reciprocal license, which means you are not obligated to republish any change or modification made to open source code. Means you no need to republish any changes or modification made to open source code. You can include the code in priority system that are sold. If you use open source component, you must knowledge the original creator of the code. Okay, this is three model of license. Okay, buyers Dofer suggests that companies managing projects that use open source should establish a system for maintaining information about open source components that are downloaded and used. You have to make a copy of license for each component that was valid at the time the component was used. License may change, so you need to know the condition that you have to agree to. Okay, be aware of the different type of license and understand how a component is licensed before it is used. Means we should aware of the different type of license and understand how component is licensed before it is used. Okay, next, be aware of evaluation pathways for components. You need to know a bit about the open source project where components are developed to understand how they may change in future. Okay, means we should know track of it because we should understand how they may change in future. Okay, educate people about open source means we should educate the people about the open source code. It's not echo to have procedures in place to ensure compliance with license condition. You also need to educate developer about open source and open source licensing. Have educating system in place, developer under tight deadline might be tempted to break the terms of license. If possible, you should have software in place to detect and stop this. Okay, participate in the open source community. If you rely on open source product, you should participate in the community and help support their development. Okay, this is the end of the module 3. Okay, we'll meet up with starting of module 4. Okay, thank you.